Hello, what's up? Here's the plan for today's live show. And everybody tell me if you hear me. We're going to go through all this if we manage. So start with site settings talk about the intricacies of picking the proper website address, the website address syntax, and then what about your email address, how you can protect it from spammers, and a few other things like setting up a common header and footer and site sections, the page title versus the menu item home, which is the default first item, and then a few things about images and file formats. I don't see the chat here. Sorry about that. See if I can figure out how to see live chat. Maybe not. Oops. Okay. I don't appear to be able to see the chat here. Sorry about that. So I won't see your questions, I'm afraid. Okay, let's start with the site settings. So I'll start with a new project. And let's go on, in order through all the settings here. Actually, I'm hoping, okay. I have my saved Safari here. Okay, so the first thing you encounter when you open the site settings is this website address. The website address is important, as the text here says, because it's communicated to search engines and social networks and all kinds of bots. The website address is saved into, for example, a file called sitemap.xml, which is sort of like an aid for search engines to find all the pages of your site, and it's required that that address be composed of not just the page file name but also all the domain part. So I'll pretend I'm building a website for Sparkle here because I'll show you about verification and other things as well later. So let's start with entering the website address. So what you see, the field here offers suggests that you enter an address with HTTPS. You should only do that if you actually have an HTTPS domain, or rather certificate installed on your server. This is something which Sparkle is compatible with but will not do directly. So you will need to get your hosting provider to add an SSL certificate to your server. So in this case, we do have an SSL certificate, so I'm going to type the web address with the HTTPS. Otherwise, you should just enter HTTP like that, or nothing at all, and that's equivalent to HTTP. So enter HTTPS. So now, what's the web address? In our case, it's sparkleapp.com. Some people prefer to have the www.sparkle. Or domain name. So in this case, it would be www. That's mainly personal preference. You can have either, but only one is the true one, the one where your pages live, and so that's what you should enter here, because this is going to be exposed to Google, so Google needs to know what is the so-called canonical website address. So in our case, it's sparkleapp.com. There are a few details about how this interacts with publishing. So for the time being, I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'll tell you more about the website address when we get to publishing. Next is the website language, and once you have set up a website address and you have set up a language, so in our case we'll type English, you can then enter additional languages. So in this case, you would enter this if you have additional language translations. Let's suppose that, for example, we add a German website. You then need to enter the base link, which means the address which is common to all pages in the other language. So suppose we had sparkleapp.de, then this would become the base link for those pages, and I would add it like that. So I'll quickly show you what happens. I think I showed you something about this in another live. So our homepage here has now the option of setting a language address for language variants. So if I set an external link, I can tell Sparkle that my German page is in fact on this other address. I enter anything here, something. Well, the homepage would actually probably be under just sparkleapp.de, and so that's what I would leave it at that. For the time being, I'm not going to set an additional language, so I'll just clear this out, and the language section disappears there. So the next site setting is verification. You can enter verification for all these search engines and other services, like Pinterest is technically not a search engine, even though you can think of it as an image-based search engine. It also has a verification code. Booking.com is definitely not a search engine, but they also have a verification code for when you use that. So in our case, I'm going to use the Google verification code. I'll not click on get code here because I have the page open here already, so I just show you the details which are interesting to you. So there are different verification methods, and Sparkle uses this HTML tag method. All the other methods can be fine, but they are not done through Sparkle. They are done, for example, Google Analytics or Tag Manager are done if you use those services through the Tag Manager or Analytics service. File upload means to verify your domain, you will download a file from the Google Webmaster Console here, Search Console, and you will have to manually upload that file to your hosting space. So this is not what we're going to do here because we want to do everything in Sparkle. So as you see here, it says already verify using this method. So this is what I actually used, but I can show you again here. So this is Google says you should copy this tag, paste it into your head section of your website. Their language is very code centric. You don't actually need to care about that. You can just copy this, and then I'll switch back to Sparkle, and I'll paste here, and as soon as I tab out of the field, you see Sparkle extracts just the interesting thing here. So this is the code that is needed, and Sparkle will work with that. Verification, to take a quick step back, just means that you are proving to Google that you own the domain, and so they will give you access to information about how your website is being indexed by Google itself, and what keywords your site visitors are using to find your content, and what searches are hitting your pages, which pages are hit most by searches. So it's interesting information to have, and you can do the same for all other search engines if you want. So let's go next to the search engine section. So enabling this causes Sparkle to create two files, robots.txt and sitemap.xml. This is their technical name. Essentially, robots is a way to suggest to a search engine which pages you want Google to index and which ones you don't. So once you enable this, you'll see that site settings add a section where you can, for each page, decide the setup. So, for example, let's add the search engine generation, search engine metadata generation. So right now, by default, all pages are allowed to be indexed and are allowed to be archived. You can choose to change this on a site-wide way, or you can do it per page. So let's just leave the default to that. So as you can see here, the home page here is using the site setting for indexing and is using the site settings for archival. But I can also, expressly say that this page will be always should always deny indexing. What this will do is it will place an instruction inside the robots.txt file, which will tell Google not to index this page. This is just informational for robots. Most robots are well behaved and will respect this. Of course, the internet is like a far west, and so you might have robots whose purpose is, for example, scraping, extracting email addresses, and they'll just ignore this and they'll just index your site anyway. So this is a good way to keep your page with confidential information out of Google. Although if it's a public page, it's probably going to be found by your site visitors anyway, but you can have reasons for this. So the other site settings are for search engines are if you want to allow search engines to collect images or not. So you can tell Google that your images folder should not be indexed. This is all images in your site, so anything you put in the navigation bar or in a gallery or a regular image. But it excludes images which are used for social sharing. So those images are still accessible by search engines, for example, Facebook's preview image. The downloadable files are stored by Sparkle in different folders, so this has its own settings for storage or not. So the next section is your website icon. There's not much I can show you here. You just set an icon here, and Sparkle will generate all these different icons in a way that is compatible with different browsers and different platforms. This is recently changed in Sparkle 2.6.2, which we just released. So it should work better with Chrome and Windows, IE and Edge icons. It always worked fine with iOS devices, but we improved it slightly so that there's a high resolution image. The other website icon is the touch bar icon and the pin tab icon. So pin tabs are, I'll show you in Safari. So for example, if I go to any of these, like apple.com, so if I want to pin the tab, see it shows a little Apple icon up here. So that's the icon. So I'll just unpin it and close it. So that's the icon you set here. It should be a simple SVG. See if I have, I don't have an SVG here to show, I'm sorry. And anyway, Sparkle will show the preview here, and we have it in the documentation actually. So docs. So the site settings are here, and the icons are here. So this is what happens. The SVG you load will be shown in the pin tab like that, and this is a touch bar. So this is what the touch bar would show when in Safari you are showing favorite sites. So back to Sparkle. I think that does it for the website icon. Next, let's talk about image generation. So Sparkle will generate multiple images for each image you place on the canvas. So I can show you quickly. For example, I have actually I'll show you Photos integration. I downloaded these two images from Pixabay, so this is just a regular Apple Photos. You can drag one in, and it becomes just a regular image, or you can drag multiple and add them as a gallery. So that's just regular ordinary Sparkle functionality. So I just want to show you very simply what happens when you have one image. So this image, as it says here, is a huge 1920 by 2081 pixel image. This resolution meter is showing you that you can easily generate a 1x, a 2x, and a 3x image. So what this means is that if I visit this page on a old iMac, I can see, which has a 1x screen, I can see the image just fine. If I open it on an iPhone or a Retina iMac, I can see it just fine. And even 3x means that if I generate 3x images, I can see even on I could see the full sharpness even on for example iPhone X. So that's controlled by which images are generated is controlled by this setting here. So Sparkle by default generates 1x and 2x images, but if you want the sharpest images and also large images, because the 3x images are going to be pretty large, so your website is going to end up being bigger and a bit slower to generate and to publish, then you can push it all the way up to 3x. But if I leave it at just 1x and 2x, I can then show you that. I'll quickly publish to disk. So I'll create a new folder on my desktop and publish there. This is going to be very quick. Oh, this is a good chance to show you this new option in Sparkle 2.6.2, which is how your code should be generated. Sparkle used to create offline compatible code, meaning you could open an index file or a web page file in the Finder and you would see it just fine. Starting with Sparkle 2.6, we added a fast, more efficient, more using cutting-edge technologies to have the page load faster and get a higher score with Google's page speed. What this means is it no longer loads from the Finder, unfortunately. There's no way to make the code both compact and efficient and compatible with loading from the Finder. So what we did is we made a high performance option separate from an offline compatible setting. So if what you want to do is view the file in the Finder, you should use offline compatible. This is not going to be as performant as setting it as high performance. So I'm only going to show you the different images being generated for now, so I'm not going to actually load the pages. So I'll just leave it at high performance. This is, since we're at it, an old option which has always been here. And if you have a lot of text in your page and you use a language which is not just plain ASCII, like even if you have an emoji on your page, or if you have diacritics, or if you have Chinese, Japanese, Korean, more complex characters, using this is compatible with all servers, and using this is makes smaller code, but some servers might not work with it. Typically in, for example, German hosting services, they set the text encoding to Latin 1, which is an older pre-Unicode text encoding, and so if you publish with this UTF-8 text, Unicode text, you will see weird characters coming out, and you will need to use ASCII text. By the way, if you publish to a web server directly using Sparkle's built-in publishing, this is automatically detected, so you don't need to worry about it. That's why this option is only here and when you export to disk. So we can now save this to disk and see what the generated files look like. So Sparkle generated a bunch of empty favicon images, and it generated this images folder. As you see, there is just one image here, but Sparkle actually generated two images. This is the 1x image and this is the 2x image. So if you visit your site with a Retina capable device, you will see this larger image. If you visit with an older device, say a Windows PC, you might see this image instead. So your website is going to be a bit larger as a result of this, but your site visitors will not be downloading both images ever, unless they have an ancient browser, and so Sparkle has workarounds for that. But with modern browsers from the last 3 or 4 years, they're just going to be loading the exact image they need. Where this gets more, so this is already a huge time saving, because you don't need to pre-crop images for Sparkle or adapt them. You just load the images as you have them, and in fact, the higher resolution images you add, the more flexibility you have. Because if I had cut the image to be this size, I couldn't be enlarging it. Instead, I can now enlarge it, and it's still perfectly capable of generating a 1x and 2x image. As you see, I'm getting an on the the image now wouldn't be good enough for 3x. It'd be almost there. So Sparkle is kind of tolerant, and it will upsample a little bit the image to make it 3x as well. But once you go that large, so now the image can no longer be loaded on a 3x. Sparkle will not generate an image for a 3x device if you have it this big. So if I go back to the smaller image, so this is a different one. It's a different size compared to earlier, so it will be regenerated. And now I'll set my images to also include 3x devices, and I publish again. What you see here is my images folder now also has the bigger image. So there's the 1x, 2x, and 3x image. So they're progressively bigger. It's not that bigger because a higher image can be a higher density image can sustain a higher JPEG compression, as it's perceptually very close. So the image is only slightly larger in size, but Sparkle is doing all the resizing behind the scenes for you. So let's go back to having just 1x and 2x. This option here will generate WebP images. WebP is a different file format. It's like JPEG and somewhat like PNG as well. And not all browsers support it, but what Sparkle does is it creates a website that will detect whether the browser support it, and that's mainly Chrome on desktop and on mobile. Mobile meaning Android. Sorry, Chrome on iOS is essentially the same engine as mobile Safari, so it's also not compatible with WebP. But so I'll show you if you have that enabled, and you publish, and we go back to the Finder. You can see that now for each JPEG there's a WebP as well. And it doesn't load in the Finder, so you'll see nothing here. It's the same image as the JPEG. As you see, it's slightly smaller again compared to the... actually, this one is larger than JPEG. That's weird. There's settings to be tweaked there. The reason the WebP images are an option here is because some web servers, mainly Microsoft Internet Information Servers, and mainly older ones, do not have the WebP extension configured, and so a website with WebP images loaded on an IIS server and viewed from a Chrome browser will fail to show properly. So you should, if you enable this, you should test with Google Chrome to be sure it's working fine for you. So turn this off, and let's go on to sharing. So the sharing option is something which you use to create a card. Let's go to the documentation again because it's shown here. So this section of the inspector here, which I'll enable now by turning that on and going to the page settings. As you see, this section here turns on once you once you enable the social settings. So what you do in this section here is enter an image, and that image will be the preview for the link to your website. So anytime someone writes sparkleapp.com or your website name in Facebook, Facebook will go fetch this image, or it actually will go to the address and see if there's information in that page about how to show a so-called card preview. So it's like a rich link. Facebook actually has a tool to show you this. So if I say open graph debugger, so it's not that. Open graph debugger. Let's see. Sharing debugger. So I'm not sure where that is. I'll share the link. Oh, I need to log in. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm now logged into Facebook here. Okay, so you can check this, and it will essentially show you that rich card, which is what happens, when I'm not logged into Facebook, so I can't show you. So if you go into Facebook and type sparkleapp.com, which you should do now, so you will share the Sparkle homepage link. Thank you very much. This will appear. This section below here, so this is the Introducing Sparkle 2.2 in this example here is the page title, and this below is the page description. So that's page title here and page description. These two parts plus the image become part of the rich card. So the reason why we don't say, we don't say social sharing, why we don't say Facebook sharing, is that actually this sharing, this card is also used for it's an open standard, the open graph. So it's also used for other services. For example, you have Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Slack, a few different services. So one problem is that all services have a slightly different size image requirement here, so we don't enforce this. What you should use here is, if I'm not mistaken, is Facebook sharing image size, I think is 1200 by 630. So that's the image size you should use, which is optimal for Facebook. Also, it says it shouldn't be larger than 8 megabytes, but Sparkle will take care of making compressed JPEG, so it should definitely be well under 8 megabytes in size if you are around this size here. Okay, so let's go on with the site settings. Google Analytics. Here again, I need to show you what information should you enter here. So of course you need to have a Google Analytics account. You will have to open one. Here I have my analytics account open. So what you need is this code here. If you go to let's see, tracking info, tracking code. Google Analytics will also show you all the code snippet, so you could in theory enter all this, but what you actually need is just the code here, and Sparkle does not unfortunately extract the code right now, so you can just grab the tracking ID here, and that's it. So another option here is Tag Manager, which is a different tracking code, and it's a bit more sophisticated, so you should probably, if you use that, you know what you're doing, and so I will not go into detail about that right now. Analytics is pretty straightforward, and it's there are privacy implications with using it, but it's very powerful, and it will show you real-time analytics and historical information about accesses to your website. Let's go on to the local business. So local business, some feedback we've got is if we could perhaps add a category in here. Unfortunately, that's not how local business works. Local business is a canned, predefined set of different categories, and so if you are a local business and you're in here, then that's okay. If you're not, there's not much that can be done about it. So what you do here is you say, what category you are in. Sparkle, fine wines, fine spirits. This is the business identifier here is essentially something that looks like a web address. It's not really. It's called a URN, and it should be some in some way an identifier of your shop location. So something like that will work. This is a proper syntax. There are details about what you should enter here on Google's websites, so maybe we'll link to those. If your food establishment has a menu, you can enter the URL here, and here you should enter the absolute address of your page. We don't currently have a way of picking a page of the site, but we might add it in the future. And there's a few different information fields that Google would like you to enter here, whether you accept reservations, your address, and Google will pick the coordinates for you here. If you uncheck it, you enter them manually, otherwise they're automatic. And then you can enter images for your storefront and enter hours open. Where is this information? Where does this information come up in Google? Well, if you go to say you search if you search in Google for something with a city name after it, like pizza in New York, which is bound to have quite a few results. What you will get is these rich cards here. Well, this information here comes straight from the local business information you enter in Google. One advice we've heard from SEO experts is if you have a local business, you should also open a My Business account within the Google Maps. I'm not going to go through that. That's definitely something you should do to be visible in Google, but you also need to do it on your website, and that's what Sparkle does in this area here. Next is privacy. So anytime you have first, I'm not a lawyer, so regulation is a bit complex. You probably would have to talk to somebody who is an expert about this and can give you legal advice. But what happens mainly for EU currently is that if your website exposes visitors of your site to cookies which are generated by, say, Google Maps or YouTube or Vimeo or any service which is a third-party service, if it's free, it's probably going to collect data in some way. So, SoundCloud or any video which you copy paste a snippet of into an embed box, all that is going to require a cookie banner. So what this does is it enables the privacy page and a cookie banner. So this banner here, show you the style. This is a privacy pop-up which will be shown to visitors of your site the first time they visit your site and until they press the OK button to accept it. Or you can have a slightly more aggressive version where they need to opt out expressly, otherwise they are tracked. But generally, I mean, for Europe at least, you should use the opt-in method. Some people think automatically accepting the cookie policy or dismissing the banner by scrolling is acceptable. Some people think it's not. I'm not really clear on which is which. and then you can decide the position of the banner. It's not shown here because this is mostly something that works when the site is published. In preview mode, let's see. You can see where the privacy banner would end up. So if I put a place at the top, you can see it there. But the privacy banner is only shown when you are in preview mode, is in the privacy policy page, as long as you are in preview mode. Once you have published the website, then you can see the banner pop up on all pages. Of course, if you once you have accepted the policy, you will no longer see it, so you'll have to delete cookies to see it again. So that was the privacy setting, and I mean, if you have questions, we can talk about it more in a future live episode. For some reason, not seeing comments for today. Sorry about that, but perhaps I'll answer all the questions you have in the next few days. So next is publishing, and we'll set up a published location right now so I can show you a few more options. So miscellaneous is the last section. There's quite a few things here which are, intricate details. You probably, I'm not sure how much they're interesting, but so let's go. The first one is whether you want the text of your web page to have an anti-aliasing which is colored versus grayscale. I think I should show you with an example, because it's so there's examples here. For example, this Wikipedia page. So this image here shows you different kinds of anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing means making your text look higher resolution than it actually is by filling in, by kind of tricking the eye, by filling in areas with light gray or different. So a very light stroke would end up being a lot of gray here. A heavier stroke would end up being more black. And once you add the subpixel, what this means is you are using the fact that the screen you are viewing the text on has in fact 3 different colors for each pixel, and you're using that to see here the instead of grays there's little colors. These colors essentially help in viewing it at a higher resolution. That's the default on all Macs, including Retina Macs. The problem is this technique is complex for many reasons. So what happens is if you have animation or you have say a black background with white text, it doesn't look very good. In fact, when you have animation, what happens is the anti-aliasing will switch from grayscale to color and back every time something moves on the page. This is, I think, not very nice, but I mean, some people prefer it on, and in fact, the first version of Sparkle had this enabled. If your audience is mainly people with older computers and small text, then perhaps you have an advantage at using the subpixel anti-aliasing for text. Otherwise, I suggest you leave it at grayscale, because even Sparkle's menu animating will make the text flicker, and so that doesn't look very good. So next is this hide excess text option with text overflow. So in Sparkle 2.5 we added a very precise text layout engine. What happens is that occasionally text renders slightly bigger than what you have placed on the canvas, and so the text will be pushing the layout around, because if you have a text box that is very precise, very near to the end of your text, say for example text like that. So if your box is something like that, well, in this case it's hard for the text to see. Let's try more. So for example, in this case, if for whatever reason this word, once the browser shows it, this word doesn't fit, it will go to the next line, it will move all the words, and so this last word here would go to the line below, and it would grow the text box. It would push the text box boundaries to make the word fit. So what we do here is, with the setting here, is hide the excess text, and this ensures the layout never moves around due to overflowing text. Within Sparkle, we show this by highlighting it with a red border. This means that there is more text than fits, and it will be clipped. If this happens in the browser, so that's a very rare occurrence, but if that happens in the browser, what you need to do is make the text box slightly taller, and these imprecisions are nothing we can actually control. But as I said, Sparkle's text engine is very, very precise, especially with web fonts, which are something you should probably use for better typographic control. These are the web fonts, and these are system fonts over which we have less control. So using the hide excess text option here makes the layout more precise. Next is the vertical scroll bar. So if your browser, if your Mac has a mouse which has a wheel on it, which is an odd thing to have to specify, but if you have a wheel, your Mac generally always shows the scroll bar in the window. It shows it if the text in the window or the content of the page exceed the height of the browser. So, for example, I don't have a wheel here, but so you see I don't have a scroll bar on the side here. But if I scroll, I get a scroll bar here, and if I go with a mouse, I get an actual scroll bar. So this on Macs with a mouse wheel, this scroll bar will always be shown if your page is very tall, but it will not be shown if the page is shorter, like in this case here. This page, well, maybe I just got below. So this page here is short, so this page here will never show a scroll bar, even if you have a wheel. So what happens is if you have a site with some long pages and some short pages, and you have a mouse wheel, the scroll bar showing up will make your pages jump horizontally, so left to right, when you go from one page to the other. This is a complex option. So what you do here in that case, if you want to avoid the jump, is you set the vertical scroll bar to always show. Finally, you have code integration. So this is, if you want to add, if you need code for some reason, and the reason we added this is actually because Google Tag Manager addresses elements on the page by their selectors, so by their ID, for example. So if you want to have, if you want the option of addressing an element on the page via JavaScript, you add this. And so, for example, I can say, I'll add a button, and this is a pretty typical case. And I'll go to the arrange, and down here I'll say this is a button. That's how this is used. If you want it, you know it. Otherwise, you probably can ignore it. So finally, I'm publishing this website. My website address is sparkleapp.com, but this page is not the final one, right? This is just a test, and I want to show other people. So what I do is I add a publish location on the web. So this web address is taken by default from the site settings web address, but I can actually be publishing this, to a test page here, because this is not final, and so I'll say I want to share it with somebody. This is not the same as the address you entered in the general site settings, because this is just where it's published, but all information about where your page resides, what its official canonical address is, stays where you set it in the general settings. So in this case, I'm going to publish to our server. Quick setup. So I'm really happy with publishing in Sparkle 2.6. It's really fast. So I just published the page to this temporary location, and as you see, my general website address is still my address, my canonical address. When I will finally publish the site, this is where it's going to go. But for publishing purposes, it was more useful to have a different address, which is just for publishing. It will not appear anywhere except when you're testing the page, and so this is me showing somebody, hey, this is our new homepage. What do you think about it? Next, we can talk about email address protection, and perhaps we'll defer the other items to next time. So the problem is avoiding spam. So you enter your contact information on a page and you say, hello, our new or hello, contact us at our email address, feedback at. So if you do this, you're out of luck. I mean, if you do this, spammers will manage to, kind of figure out this is probably an email address. They'll add it to their list, and you'll start getting spam. The first thing to do is copy this out. Is to not use your email address in plain text anywhere. So what you have to write here is like, contact us at our email address, and then make this open an email. So when this linked on click, open an email, and that address is here. So what this does is it creates. This is the published site. Let's go to the preview. What this does is it creates a small script. So I just enabled. If you check in the bottom left corner of the browser here, you can see it says run script em1. So what this means is the email address has been hidden inside Sparkle's JavaScript files, and it has been encrypted is a strong word. It has been obfuscated, so it's not obvious. So when you click on this, it will be unobfuscated, and I don't have an email client set up here, so it will send an email to that address. Thing is, if you have more sophisticated spammers, they could still manage to extract the email address from here. So it's not ideal, and so even Sparkle says this address will be hidden until the visitor clicks the link. When you click the link, it's necessarily unobfuscated and sent to the mail app, so it's not a very strong protection, and some spammers are pretty sophisticated about that. So what you need to do instead is use a contact form, and contact forms are they're not very complex, but they're non-obvious in a few ways, so I can show you that. So very quickly, you want your visitor to leave you a message. So this here is going to be what I see in my email, and I'm going to leave a placeholder, which is type your message here, and so the site visitor will see this. This is a box with many things in it, so I'll put uncheck the single line so the visitor can type multiple lines here, and then I'll add a button which sends me the message. Of course, send a message. So of course this is just a message and nothing else. So what we probably want is to have the visitor email address to get back in touch with them. And so we'll just type email. So me@domain.com, placeholder text here showing that this is an email address. Now to tie these all together and make turn this into a contact form, there's a few steps. First one is say that on click this emails the form through the web server. So this form will be emailed from your server. So the form elements collected are the email address and the message. Elements collected means these will be grabbed by the button and will be sent via email. So you need to check them here. See what's next. The from and to address, these are the email address and the email you will receive. So this is nothing the user will see. And so this generally needs to be your domain for spam prevention purposes. So sparkleapp.com. And this doesn't actually have to be an existing mailbox. It just needs to be an address which spam filters think is legitimate. So the sparkleapp.com part is a real existing domain which you own. And next I'll enter the address, so feedback at sparkleapp.com. So this is where the spam protection comes in. The site visitor will never see this, right? Your server is sending you an email with this sender and this receiver, so spammers will never have a chance of seeing it. Of course, they can fill out the form and send it, and so you'll receive that kind of spam, but they will not grab your email address and be able to use it in the future. So if I leave it like this, people might just click this without filling anything in, and that's annoying to receive empty emails. So I'll just set this field as being required here in the validation section, and also let's make the message required as well, so they need to fill something in. Last step when setting up the form is that the email can't be sent unless you pick a thank you page. So this is because the thank you page will be will run the code which actually sends the email. So we add a new page, and this page says just anything like thank you, and we say that the page 4 is our thank you page. I could have given it a better name. And it also needs to be a PHP page. So this only works with servers which have PHP, which is luckily 99% of them, but you have to have this. So I'll click change here. So now it's all set. This is I can publish this and show you. Of course, I need a way to reach that page. So just add a default menu up here. Take the privacy policy out and publish again. And so as you see, now I have published the page. My page 3 is my form page. So here I enter, if I try sending without filling out, it's required. So it will force me to type something. And so I'll just send myself an email like that. And that's a very ugly but simple contact form. So that's all for today, I think. Next time we'll look into these other things, and I'll answer any question you have. So just feel free to comment on the video or send us a feedback email. It's all very useful, and thanks for watching.